Hey, what's up, White Knuckle Army? Welcome to the White Knuckle Podcast, episode number 4. Today, Todd and I have the pleasure of speaking with Tom Miller, the Vice President of the North American Shed Hunters Club. Today, we're going to cover several different topics regarding shed hunting. Tom's going to tell us a little bit about their organization, and then we're going to get into some shed hunting techniques. It's sure to be a fun episode. With that, let's listen in as Tom Miller, Todd Pringnitz, and myself talk everything that is shed hunting and the North American Shed Hunters Club. And as is always the case, don't be afraid to leave your comments on our Facebook page, our Twitter feed, or on Instagram. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the White Knuckle Podcast. Today with us, we have Tom Miller, the Vice President of the North American Shed Hunters Club, and also with me as my co-host, Todd Pringnitz. Guys, how's it going today?
Very good, very good.
Awesome, man. I'm just dying to get out and do some walking, man.
Yeah, well, with the recent snow, I don't know how things are in Iowa, Todd, but we just ended up getting a couple inches, maybe 3 inches last night. I know I had a shovel this morning, so it was enough.
Lucky buggers, man.
Yeah, I know.
It's been so mild down here in Iowa. It's been, it's just been basically the waiting game. I've been just basically monitoring a couple different cameras on key areas where I can get pictures of everything. And as of right now, I know of like one 1-year-old that shed one side. Everything else is still packing both sides. So this is the hardest part of shed hunting. Sometimes it's not walking.
Tom, tell us a little bit about the North American Shed Hunters Club. I know that you guys are located here in Wisconsin. You've got a museum of sorts, or rather something that houses some sheds, etc., correct?
Yeah, we're actually, our home office is Linden Station, Wisconsin, right near Wisconsin Dells, a big tourist town. And we got a showroom open there all the time, so you can stop in any time and check out most antlers on display. A lot of stuff's out on the road right now doing shows, but there's always a pretty good display of antlers there. But as an organization, we started in 1992. They were centered up by the Minneapolis area, and we took over the club in 2002 and brought it here to Wisconsin. But it's a national organization. We got members in stores in every state and every Canadian province. And I said our agenda is basically to bring shed light to shed antlers and get those babies recognized in the record book to let the trophies that they actually are. So,
well, that's you just kind of hit on it a little bit, but giving recognition to the sheds, there's a part of me as a hunter that really, I didn't really enjoy hunting as much, I don't think, until I really started getting into shed hunting. And it is truly a part of our season now where whitetail season isn't just from October 1st until, the end of the season or whatever. For me, each part of the season is just another aspect of it. But shed season, man, like I was hunting a really nice one this year and I didn't end up getting them. And so like on my last hunt, I'm already planning my shed hunts, and so there's, we all want to kill these big deer, obviously, but the lining in the cloud is that if you don't, you can go out and hunt them in a different way, looking for the sheds. And that's just been, it's just awesome. So I'm sure shed antlers kind of have probably been a big part of your life too, Tom. How did you get into it? Tell us a little bit about your background in shed hunting and how it became a big part of your life.
We're a big hunting family here. And actually my brother Mark and I picked up a pretty decent 5-point way back in the 80s, and it kind of just got us hooked. And then, just seeing, like I said, like you talked about, having an extension of the season, I think is the main thing. People are always looking for something to do in the spring of the year to get out of the house, get that cabin fever cured a little bit, and to be able to get out there and actually do something that ties into what you're doing this fall is going to make a big difference. But it's, we're our own worst enemy at times. Like I said, years ago, there was nobody shed hunted, and now it's like, I don't know of any hunter that doesn't do a little bit of shed hunting on the side. So, but it's a great passion, and it's a great activity to get the kids out there. That's our biggest sell right now is, with the outdoors and everything we got going on, is where we did a seminar down at the Kansas Monster Buck Classic this last weekend, and we preached for quite a while. We talked about getting kids in the outdoors, and, you see all these kids with, going down the wrong road and complaining they had nothing to do, and they said otherwise getting wrapped up in things they shouldn't be. And getting these kids involved in outdoors. They are the next generation, and if we don't develop that next generation, our sport's not going to exist either. So, getting these kids involved, and the nice part, you don't need a license, you don't need a tag, there's no age limit, and just to get those kids out there and get them doing something positive.
I couldn't agree with you more there. I tell you, it's kind of scary, even with my wife and I have to monitor each other just with the phones and everything, with all this technology. And I've actually been out shed hunting with guys where they were on the phone the whole time. I'm like, you're kind of missing the whole point, I think, of going out and walking. But I think the part of it for me that has been the most enjoyable is it's like the greatest time of the year to scout. And that's when I really started to notice, just if you're hunting individual animals, getting lucky by hunting a pinch point or a funnel or whatever, you just realize over a period of time, like, that's not how you kill those individual animals. It takes a lot more than luck. So the shed season, man, is my favorite time to go out, because especially, like, I manage my farm here and a couple ground pieces around it. During the hunting season, even right now, I'm like Hitler on the farm. Like, no, we can't go there. Can't do this. Can't do that. Once I know all the antlers are gone, they've all shed, or a majority of them, that's when, like, you can get out and uncover all the secrets from the past season in your hunting area. And I mean, to me, I think that's when I started really making the connection, is finding the shed antlers, doing the scouting at the same time. It's almost like scouting and getting a bonus of, being able to potentially find a shed antler. And I think maybe we all get crazy, man. I want to find sheds just as much as the next guy, but I think I kind of set my mind to where I'm out scouting, and if I find a shed, bonus. And it kind of sets you up at least where you're not, totally disappointed. Especially, I think that's probably one of the toughest things about shed hunting, is if you've never done it too much before, and you've never found a shed antler. I have friends and people who live right here in Iowa. One of the guys that works for me, a young kid, and he's never found a shed antler. He lives right here in Iowa. But until you kind of go out with the guys who know what they're doing and in the right areas, you got to have that influence in your life sometimes to find them. And the Nevars we were talking about earlier, Andy's going to be our next guest, but I shed hunted with Andy and some of his brothers years and years and years ago. And it was like an eye opener. I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Now I see why they find sheds, because they walk and walk and walk from morning until dark, and they don't stop walking. I mean, it's just nonstop covering territory. And so that was kind of my eye opener. And then now, since those days of just going out looking for any sheds, now I look for individual bucks, individual sheds. And that's kind of my territory of excitement and fun. But Jason, how is your shed season in your neck of the woods there, kind of in the same area where these guys call home as well?
I'm not sure where Tom, spends most of his time shed hunting, but the property that I have, basically the block that I would be shed hunting in, I guess for the majority of the time, the deer just aren't there in the winter. There's a few that stick around, so inevitably we'll find a few. But shed hunting for me is not something that I devote a ton of time to, because there just aren't the deer there. And I think if I'm not mistaken, the biggest part of shed hunting is the deer have to be there in order to find the antlers.
It usually kind of helps sometimes.
Tom, what do you have to say about that? What can you speak to in terms of how you go about setting up your shed hunting season? Is there any tips, tactics, etc. that you'd like to share with us?
Well, just like regular hunting, I mean, scouting is your number one advocate, and there's kind of a middle ground there, a happy medium, we kind of like to call it, because you talk about those areas that you don't want to get into. Those are off limits to all the antlers are on the ground, but you also need to be able to get into some of those areas to see what's in there for deer. And once that secondary rut is done, your bucks start getting back into their bachelor groups again, and that's the hard part, because where you see a lot of signs, sometimes that might be a shed zone that's great, and it might be not a buck in that area. And like I said, we have, I don't know, a couple of years ago there was a spot up here in the valleys, and I commented my brother Mark on just how, oh my God, the deer sign there's unbelievable. And Mark, had commented that they went through there a couple of times, and all they seen was does and fawns. And so it was an area that obviously the bucks weren't. And, and here a half mile down the road, a week later, I locate a batch group of 5 nice bucks, and it ended up that was where the shed zone was. So you got to do some scouting, but, we recommend doing it at a distance. You got to keep in mind these deer are at a very susceptible time during the winter, whether it's, depending how strict your winter is. And, you don't want to pressure them too much. And we see out west, some of the elk areas, they've actually put in antler seasons basically to keep people from harassing the elk until the winter's basically subsided. And so you got to kind of find that middle ground. You want to get in there and do a little scouting, but you don't want to get in there too early where you're bumping them out. But then we also have that situation with these deer where, like you said, you get deer holding antlers in April, and we have other ones dropping them in December. So, what's too early and what's too late. So, but like I said, the early season, early shed season scouting is very important. We like to do driving around up in the hills a little bit and, towards dark and try and locate where you might, it's where you see a batch or group of bucks in first week of January. If your winter doesn't change a whole lot from that point on, that's going to be a good area for you to get started.
So it sounds like what you do is ride around, try, I guess, just like you would in maybe early September, et cetera. If you're going to set up a plan for killing a buck the first week of at least the Wisconsin season, you're driving around, you're looking for deer, and then obviously trying to identify that bachelor group of bucks that are, back together now in December, like they were in late August. And it sounds to me like you're sort of keying in on that area.
Yeah, like I said, you're, obviously just going out and sporadically shed hunting, hiking the hills and things like that, you're going to have some success most likely too. But like I said, especially if you're keying in on a certain buck, if you can find where he's located at the first week of January, that's usually a pretty good key zone to where he's going to be. We call it the Sunday afternoon football effect, and deer are no different than human beings. You got a couch and you got a refrigerator and you got a trail in between, and that's exactly what deer will do. They got their bedding, their bedding zone, they got their feeding zone, and the trails in between. So, they're not going to travel real far, especially in the Midwest here, where you get some good snow depths. Where they'll relocate from deer season to actual shed season can be astronomically different. My best shed that I ever found was last spring. I found about an 80-inch 5-point, had a 9.5-inch drop tine on the one side. So, and that deer was actually shot. I never found the other side, but the deer was shot the last day of our season here with 10 minutes of light left. An old guy got him up here in the hills. It was actually it was a little over 4 miles from where I found the shed. So, where they go from hunting season to shed hunting season can be a big difference. But, if you can get them located a little bit with your trail cameras and things like that, the first week of January, we like to call as our key date. That's pretty close to where they're going to be dropping their sheds most likely.
It is the first week of January?
Well, that's not necessarily when they drop them, but like I said, if your winter doesn't change a whole lot, if you got decent snow depth in that time frame, and that's, they're locating a food source that's going to carry them through the winter.
Gotcha.
That we just say the month of January, I think, is when a lot of them hit the ground. But like I said, every state's a little different, every zone's a little different, and there's a million key factors into what makes these horns drop when they do. So.
No, and for us here, we're a little bit later. It seems like the commonality is the further north you go, the earlier they drop. And I think most of that just has to do with snow, stress, and, down here, it's been mild. I mean, yesterday afternoon, my wife and I took an ATV ride with light coats on, and it was like in the upper 50s. So last year we had similar weather, and we had a terrible shed season because the deer just never were forced to yard up or get, in the concentrated areas. But earlier in the conversation, Tom mentioned something about scouting, and I am in 100% agreement. A lot of the areas that I shed hunt now, I have experience with. So I kind of know where the deer are going to be, I know where the bucks are going to be, et cetera. So I don't have to go and necessarily scout because I know where they're at. I'm monitoring by trail camera. But for the guys who haven't had good shed luck in the past, and who are maybe, trying to figure out why are the deer not on my property, it all revolves around food and cover this time of year. What I did when I first moved to Iowa, I got permission to hunt some farms initially. After my first season of hunting, I realized most of the farms that I hunted were overhunted. They were not the quality that I was looking for. So this time of year in January, I went out at last light and I would drive around out the country and look for the fields that were just loaded with deer. And once you saw the deer, you could start to recognize the number of deer trails and runs along the roads, crossing ditches and whatnot. And you could start correlate, okay, all those deer are there, look at the runs. Okay, there's tons of deer sign coming in and out of these ditches. And you could literally cover a ton of territory by vehicle, find where the deer are, and then do what a lot of guys aren't willing to do. Go start knocking on doors. And I got permission years ago, and actually Wayne Nevar was down hunting with me. I did the same thing. I'd driven around. I was trying to find the deer, and I found a field that was absolutely loaded every night. And had some bucks still out in it. You could tell some bucks had shed. And so I went and systematically knocked on, I think there was about 4 or 5 different landowners that owned that section. And sure enough, I got on one of the pieces. Myself, Wayne Nevar, Russ went in there. And I think in a matter of 24 hours, we found something like 15 or 16 antlers. And it was just because I knew where those deer were. So, guys, this is the time of year. There aren't very many people out talking to farmers and trying to get permission. And this has kind of been one of my secret times of year where you can go out. They've already hunted their farm for that season, so to speak. And around here, getting permission to hunt new farms, you got to use every advantage you can. And sometimes in the spring, landowners are a little bit more likely to give you permission to go look. And then that's a great opportunity to get to know them before hunting season, if there's good deer there. And more often than not, you end up getting on loser farms, and you got to know when, hey, I'm not going to find an antler here. I'm not going to waste any more time. You've got to go on to the next piece. And I think a lot of guys do that. If they're just shed hunting in the wrong spots. And Tom, I'm sure you could agree with me. When I walk into a piece, a section of property, and there's no sign, I don't waste much time there. I mean, I do a quick once over just to make sure there's nothing that has been overlooked. And then I'm out of there and I'm going looking for signs, looking for the deer, so that I'm spending my time in the right areas and not wasting time finding antlers that don't exist. And I think a lot of guys do that in hunting season as well. They chase, ghosts that literally don't exist. So if they're not there, guys, you're not going to find them.
Like I said, I think that scene with your scouting, you talked about that. It might not be necessarily locating an area, but it's going to be eliminating a lot of areas too. You can drive a back road if there's some snow on the ground. It's been there for a couple of weeks. And if you don't see a track or a trail anywhere, you can eliminate those areas. And you hit a big keynote there of, getting land access. That's something we do preach. And a lot of people think that shed hunting, there is no property lines. There is property lines. You have to respect that landowner. And but a lot of times it is not hard to get permission for shed hunting, especially if you're in an agricultural area. Don't be afraid to throw out that famous line, I'm going to save you a tractor tire this year. We've received over, 20 to 25 pictures sent to us now this year already of, it's kind of a neat thing to try and the farmers that run them over in the field, they get pictures of antlers in their tractor tires. And if you've got an area with some winter wheat or some things like that coming up where they're going to be getting into that field, picked cornfield, stuff like that. I mean, they do major damage to tractor tires. And if you can save a farmer a tractor tire, that'll mean an awful lot to them. But don't be afraid to knock on doors. And like I said, it always opens up avenues. The ranch we hunt in Montana, that was a spring turkey shed hunt. We stopped and asked if we could do some turkey hunting and shed hunting, got permission. And now we got our camper parked there, and we hunt on our ranch every winter, so every fall. So it opens up a lot of avenues and a lot of doors for you, that's for sure.
I agree. And one other tip I've kind of come to, a lot of times the farms that I would get permission to hunt on, the best ones are usually with the most naive owners, where they don't hunt, they don't have family that hunts, because generally if they have close family that hunts, you're not going to be able to shed hunt there. But the pieces that I would get permission from, I always was very careful with the words I used, and I never mentioned the word hunting, because I would always ask, would you mind if I went and looked for deer antlers or shed antlers? Sometimes people get confused and you say shed hunting, and they think you're literally asking permission to go out and deer hunt this time of year. And they're like, well, wait, the season isn't going on, but it's all in the words you use. So whenever I go ask permission for anybody, I always ask if I could look for deer antlers or deer shed antlers. I don't ask to shed hunt, because that's it's a term that not everyone hears like we do all the time. So if you're just some old lonely farmer and you're not exposed to guys who do this, if you say shed hunting, a lot of times these people just automatically assume you're going to be out there with shotguns with 20 guys doing deer drives. I mean, that's what they think of when they think of people asking permission. That's just they're. So to me, I never say the word hunting when I'm talking about shed antlers. That's just my tip.
Tom, do you find that you're not just necessarily trying to gain more information from the deer that you chased last year or recover the antlers from the deer that you chased last year. Is this bigger than that for you? Is it more of a sport? Are you going all over the place just for the sake of finding sheds? I get the sense that it's kind of there's a hunting season for you, and then there's a shed season. And hunting season might limit you to a specific area. And it sounds like the cool thing about shed hunting is that you may not be limited to, as small of an area as you would during the hunting season. Is that accurate?
Very true. Like I said, that's the first thing. We're not an anti-hunting group by any means, and that's we actually got some calls years ago from a couple people because we had posted. We had our forum on there, and people were posting pictures. It was turkey season, and they were throwing some turkey pictures on there, and some people actually sent us some pretty nasty emails wanting to know what kind of group we were, and we thought we were a non-consumptive organization and that we didn't shoot deer and everything else. And so we want to get that out there right away. 99% of us are big-time deer hunters. And like I said, there's that scouting aspect, but I truly believe it'd be hard pressed for me. I shot a nice deer this last fall, and I don't know if I had any different feeling than I do when I find a nice 5-point shed or 4-point shed. Your heart jumps the exact same. And if you've been out there and been a shed hunter, I think you can correlate what the feeling is. And there is the trophy ended thing is obviously driving things crazy. The record book here is like I said, Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett and the North American Shed Hunters Club, and what they do to recognize these trophy antlers is a great thing. But it's I don't want to say I'm going to pass up a deer so I can find his sheds, but at times I'm not real upset sometimes when if a big one gets through and nobody gets him. It adds to a lot of excitement for shed season. And the nice part is you don't have to pass them up. You don't have to let the little ones go. You can pick them all up.
True, very true.
Tom, I like your comment on that too, because that's it's cool to know in the back of your mind that, okay, I'm going to be looking for those things if he survives, some of these older or immature deer or deer you don't want to kill that you'd rather let go. And for me, I was just thinking about it the other day too. I think like the last 6 or 7 bucks I've killed, I've had at least one shed too. And there is something. I killed the Rusty Nail. I had 5 of his sheds. I'm going to make a beautiful mount out of him. But there's something about that history, man. And just like what you said, when you see him laying there, especially when it's a buck you've been following and and you see that rack, like it's almost better than killing him because you still have the season ahead of you to go after him. So it's just like a huge piece of the puzzle. And I don't know, man. It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. But the other part of this is, especially yourself, Tom, you probably found you were just telling us about the shed you found last year. I about choked. I live in an area that is not like, I'm not fortunate enough to have like 2,000-3,000 acres worth of ground that nobody else goes in. Mm-hmm. So depending on how many other guys are going to be shed hunting in these areas, and same thing like public land, you're better off going out multiple times, and you've got to start this time of year because guys are going to be in there. So you've kind of got to look at it from a different perspective than maybe some of us who own property and can just leave it alone. But if there's a farm that I hunt and I shed hunt, and I know other guys are going to be shed hunting it, I'll put 2 to 3 times as much pressure shed hunting on that piece as I would my own. Just because half of shed hunting is you've got to get out there and find them first, and somebody else is going to beat you to it. That can be a challenge, especially on public land and things like that. But I have a question for you, Tom. I've been talking with a bunch of my buddies over the years, and we've had this theory about coyotes picking up shed antlers just out of instinct, like a dog picks up a bone. Do you think much of that goes on? Because I know I've looked for shed antlers for different bucks that I knew right when they shed. I knew the areas they were in, and I swear, man, like the stuff, some of them still keep me awake at night, where the heck these sheds went to. Do you think that happens? Do coyotes pick up shed antlers?
No, I wouldn't be surprised. We actually joked one day that there's got to be a coyote den somewhere on the property that's got this monster pile of sheds in it. So, yeah, that theory has been discussed numerous times. But one day I know they do is they will urinate on them. They will use them as marking posts, and they'll try and erase any scent in the area. So, and antlers do have a scent. Obviously, they're a material from the deer, and so a lot of guys are getting into the shed dogs. Is getting to be a huge thing. Is training your dog to find sheds, and I said it does make sense. Like I said, they do have a scent to them, and it's so I would not be surprised that coyotes are picking them up, and maybe I'm guessing that's what happened to the other side of mine from last year. It can't be because I'm not a good shed hunter, so it's got to be something like that a coyote took it.
Well, I mean, especially big ones, if there's a 70, 80-inch side laying out in the timber someplace, like it's possible to walk past them at a certain distance in the right spot. But when you find the big ones, usually it's like, boom, it's a beacon. You can see them. So that's what drives you more crazy than anything. It's the bigger they are. They're like, they're out there someplace. Are they laying at the bottom of my creek? I also have a belief that all of my bucks get together in a basher group. They have a party some night, and they all shake their antlers off inside the creek where I can't find them. It just perplexes me. Like, do deer during shed season, do they just go out on a random excursion like they do during the rut and go a mile or two away to shed? This stuff drives me nuts. I mean, it literally drives me crazy at night. I can't sleep sometimes.
Well, it's crazy to think how much ground they can cover, though, too, especially, you talked about that, if it's a winter where they don't herd up. We had here in Wisconsin last year, they were eating acorns until Christmas darn near. So, I mean, deer are really spread out and really sporadic. And, if you got an area, winter where you get some deep, deep snow and they really get refined to maybe some bean field like left behind or a picked corn field or something like that, it can really concentrate. And that's what you have out west. You get the wintering yards of elk where they look like cow pastures. Well, it can't be real tough to pick up sheds. And I think that's why, they had to put those antler seasons in out there. And we were a little resistant to it at first, but then, in the end, it all made sense, to try and, to be, more conducive to the animal and things like that. So getting those elk through the winter is the biggest thing. And that's the same thing here in Wisconsin and wherever you're at here in the Midwest. If you pressure your animal, not only going to push it out of your area for shed season, but, if it's a severe enough winter, that driving that animal up and out of a valley, he's using energy that he doesn't need to be during that time of the year.
Guys, as long as I've got both of you and Tom, I know you're on a limited time budget here, but if I could just ask a couple of questions to you guys real quick, to both of you, because clearly you guys are better shed hunters than I am. I'm going to go with just because I don't have the area that you do, because that makes me feel better. But for the average guy, gal, that's going to go shed hunting tomorrow. Tom, you can go first. What are the three most important things that you either do before you leave the house in terms of, what's your plan going to be? And what's the most important thing that you're doing when you're out there? I guess what are the top three things that you take into consideration, or you take into consideration when you're planning prior to going out for that shed hunt?
Optics are very important. They can erase a lot of miles, and so you see hundreds of sticks, especially if you're out west. I mean, every piece of sagebrush and every piece of little driftwood looks like a shed antler. So a lot of times you can eliminate a lot of miles by having good optics and zooming in on things at a distance. Other than that, like I said, concentrate in that food source, concentrate in that bedding area. Southern exposures, deer can detect thermals that we cannot. So, when we're in a valley, if you're out of the wind, it might feel like everything's the same temperature, but a southern exposure, can be 2 to 3 degrees warmer than a northern exposure. And you can see that your snow melts off a lot quicker and everything else. So now, as they give you more visibility with bare ground sooner, like I said, it's an area that typically they'll bet on. And like I said, the trails will run in between. Concentrate on, you got your main trails that are very easy to detect. This is a tip that we always carry over to hunting season too. Your bigger bucks will not run typically on your main, we call them cow path trails. They'll come from the same place and usually go to the same place, but they'll run secondary trails that a lot of times will run parallel. And so a lot of times we've had guys that good luck actually working back and forth perpendicular. Typically is when you see a big trail, hey, I'm just going to walk down this trail. Guys will have better luck actually working back and forth perpendicular across that trail, looking up and down it every time they cross it, obviously. But they're actually covering secondary trails all the time that they don't realize that they are covering. And that's a great tip to carry over to your deer season too. Putting your stand, 20 yards from this great big cow path trail, you might see a lot of deer. But like I said, you're good chance you're not going to see that great big monster buck until, maybe the rut you will, but especially in your early season, try and find a secondary trail that your bigger bucks and more mature deer are using.
Great tips. Absolutely awesome tips, especially Tom, the comment you said about the main trails and everything. I'm a huge believer in that. And I'll tell you, I've found a lot of shed antlers in some goofy spots over the years that are just those, it's not only necessarily the spot that it's a spot that is possibly overlooked by the shed hunters, shed poachers too, because they're going the main trails. They're going to get through, try to cover ground as opposed to, and most guys do that. They want to cover ground as opposed to be systematic, I guess you could say.
That makes complete sense. Todd, what are your plans prior to going out? What makes you not necessarily what makes you tick, but what is it that you take into consideration?
Couple things. One is if you have snow on the ground, even if it's early, I love shed hunting in the snow. It makes it tougher to find the antlers, but if you have a darker colored antler with a darker colored base, sometimes, especially up north with darker antlers, sometimes the snow is what allows you to see them. So to me, you can get 2 shed seasons out of every piece of ground. One is with snow on the ground, one is without. Also with the snow, you have all your sign laid out and all your beds laid out. And I've learned so much about where the does bed, just the tendencies of the deer by following trails in the snow. And it's just a magical time to be out shed hunting anyway. It's a lot more work, but you can learn so much with snow on the ground. Number 2, I am going out and I think of myself, it's the one time of year I consider myself more of an athlete than I do a hunter. I used to carry a backpack filled with 450 pounds of crap that I didn't need. I've gotten it down to a science because we have to film everything. So now I carry a Camelback, has saved me so much time and energy over the years and made my shed hunts so much more enjoyable. The other part is you don't have to stop to get your water bottle, take a drink. So you can be walking, you can be drinking, sipping on something all the time. And the other part of it is food. You've got to bring food out. When I'm normally going out for a shed hunt, I go between 2 and 4 hours generally, because at about 4 hours is when I start hitting my max where I'm just wiped out. And as soon as you start getting exhausted, you stop paying attention, and then you could be walking by sheds. So I always make sure I have a Camelback full of water. I always make sure I bring an apple, an orange, something like a natural fruit, and then I bring like a power bar or something like that as well. So you get kind of a different type of food, a couple different types of food. But dude, if you're not tuned in and focused, you're going to miss antlers. So I would rather take more breaks, eat a little bit, drink a lot while I'm walking. And to me, that's a huge factor. And just don't bring any extra weight you don't need. So for me, that means I don't bring a backpack. I bring my Camelback and I basically cinch things to the outside of it so that I carry as little weight as humanly possible. Even down to my camera, I just carry a small little Sony type camera with a small little dog pot. But that's my tip is you've got to be comfortable if you're going to spend any real time doing it, and you're going to have to spend some real time doing it if you expect any real results. So get yourself set up. And I don't know, part of the fun for me is all the process, getting the equipment ready and all that. That's always a good time. But I don't know. Other than that, I would just say, over the years, I have found hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sheds. And I can't tell you how many of those sheds I found at my moment of desperation, where I was just like, how in the heck can I not be finding antlers out here? There's sign everywhere. There's poop everywhere. I know the deer are here. This is where they're wintering, and you just don't find them. And that's the number one thing is you just got to stay determined and focused, and don't get too caught up in not finding them on a couple trips or whatever. Don't let that ruin your mood, because Dan, same thing is how many times over the years, if you've been out hunting and not found anything, and then the next shed hunt is when you find a slammer, or right at the end of a shed hunt, you're walking back to your truck and going across a stupid spot, and boom, all of a sudden there it is. It's just like, sometimes I swear God just plays tricks on you during shed hunting, and I literally will get to the point where I'm like, but that's shed hunting, man. That grind is what I love about it, because over the years, it can happen anytime. It's like deer hunting. You never know when it's going to happen, and it usually happens when you least expect it, which makes it so much awesome.
They call it hunting for a reason, right?
Absolutely. Tom, just to wrap this up a little bit for you, because I know you got to get going. Tell us If we wanted to get involved with the club, how would we go about doing it? Where can we find you at?
Well, our Facebook page is our greatest resource right now. Social media is as many negatives as it has. It does have a lot of positives to it. So we have a great Facebook page, and you can always like up in there and keep in touch with us there. We have our website that actually is getting redone right now, so it's going to be down here for another week here, it looks like. But www.shedantlers.org, shedantlers.org. And it's a very, very active group. So we got people all over the country. If you got an antler to get scored, there'll be an active list of scores on our website. But otherwise, we partnered up with Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young. We're part of the big three now. So if you have a Boone and Crockett score or Pope and Young score in your area, most of the state organizations we do accept to a Wisconsin Buck and Bear Club and a lot of Minnesota Measures, and like I said, all the state organizations we do accept their scores too. So you can get a score record book sheet right off our website, and they can fill it out for you and get her sent in to us and get your certificate out to you right away. So like I said, it's a
now, Tom, if you don't mind me asking, are you planning on are you going to be at the Iowa Deer Classic or the Wisconsin Deer Classic this year?
We will be running the big shed contest at the Iowa Deer Classic. I will not be there personally as of right now anyway, but we got a big crew of guys going down. So like I said, if you got a big shed to get brought in, the Iowa Deer Classic, it's a great, great event to have it at. So they do a wonderful job putting on a big shed contest there. So I
was going to say too, for any enthusiasts, antler enthusiasts, deer hunting enthusiasts, or shed hunter enthusiasts, the Iowa Deer Classic is something special. So if you want to go see some huge sheds, some cool bone, and meet a lot of enthusiasts in the sport from every facet, the Deer Classic is fantastic. It is the greatest whitetail show on earth. And if you can't make the Iowa show, Wisconsin show is also excellent. And there's tons of good people up there and lots of big bones. So you truly don't know how many antler nuts are out there until you start exploring and talking with guys. And who knows, you might meet the guy who brings you on your next shed hunt.
So that's that Iowa Deer Classic. I got previously there. Larry Huffman started that years ago, and I remember we had a meeting in about our fourth year down there. And he was beating himself up because he let a hot tub company set up a hot tub booth, and he tried to cater everything had to be deer hunting orientated. And if you had to find, if you wanted to do a booth there, you had to find your connection as to how your products pertain to that sport. So like I said, I truly believe it is the best deer only classic in basically in North America. It's just a phenomenal show.
It is, and lots of serious hunters, serious people, and it kind of is like a Midwest mini ATA show. It has a lot of those same feelings, just a different level of seriousness among the consumers that show up, both professionals, consumers, everybody. But it's just a cool place to be, to talk about deer and to look at antlers. And I'll tell you, you'll meet some of the most fantastic people at some of these deer shows just because, it brings out all the crazies. So, and I'm nuts like it, just like Tom's nuts for it. And so we all get together and share stories from the season. And I'll tell you, that's a show that you can't come out of there with a big head because somebody's going to make you humble at that show based on what they bring. And that's part of what I love about it too, is I tell you, you're never going to kill the biggest, and you're never going to find the biggest. Somebody's always going to find one bigger, but that's what makes it exciting. I just love it.
Tom, in terms of the museum itself, is it in Mawson or is it in Linden Station?
Yeah, it's in Linden Station. It's in the basement of our grocery store, Miller's General Store, right downtown Linden Station, about 2 blocks off the interstate. So. But like I said, that's open all the time, 8 to 8 every day. So stop in any time and they can turn the lights on and go down and enjoy the museum. There's lots to look at for sure. Okay.
So, and there's just the normal regular hours of the grocery store there in Linden Station, Wisconsin, right off of I-9094. If you happen to be coming by, stop in there. Well, Tom, on behalf of White Knuckle Productions and the White Knuckle Podcast, thanks for taking the time to spend with us. I've certainly learned a little. I think probably my biggest takeaway is that this isn't a whole lot different than deer hunting. It's still a whole lot of scouting and thought that goes into it prior to going out, and it sounds like it's pretty good to have a plan and a solid plan prior to heading out there.
I'll leave you with one note. Make sure you need to be looking at the ground to find the antlers. And it sounds stupid, but we get in the woods and we concentrate on looking out at the valley and down at a tree way down at the bottom of the valley, or where am I going to put that stand next fall? And I guarantee I've walked by more sheds than I found in my lifetime. So keep your eyes zoned out about 5-10 feet, and like I said, be careful of your surroundings too. Though we hear more shed hunters walking into sticks and things like that and branches because they're not paying attention to what's in front of them either. So.
And again, thank you so much, Tom. It's been a great pleasure. And what I would like to note is we're going to have another shed episode or two coming your way here very soon. And I'm going to get more into detail on my specific tactics on what I actually do, how I walk in particular areas, because I'm nuts over it, man. I've got like a strategy in my brain, and I map everything as I go. So we're going to get more into the specific tactics on trying to find those sheds if they're there in your area. And then also the second part of that is I suck at shed hunting. I need to become better, and a lot of that usually revolves around properties. So we'll try to give you some tactics and tips on how to get on those properties so that you can become a master like Tom and the Shed Hunters Association.
All right. Well, thanks again, Tom, for taking the time. We certainly appreciate it, and good luck to everyone out there this shed season.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one, and keep shedding.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks again for tuning in. I think we got lots of good information there on shed hunting from Tom and from Todd. They both certainly are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to finding those shed antlers that we all are so eager to find here in the spring. With that, I'll close out today's show. Thanks again for everyone for tuning in. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in. And again, please leave your comments on our Facebook page or any of the social media outlets that we have. If you're looking for any of the websites, etc., they will be in the show notes. That's all for now. Jason out.